Hi, I'm Chris Powell. Today we're looking at the workflow of someone who doesn't necessarily take pictures, but rather captures moments. Today we're talking with my good friend and colleague, AJ Barse, a Bellingham-based photographer, Patreon creator, and technologist. And today we're going to check out AJ's Whatcom Workflow. Well, welcome to Whatcom Workflow, AJ. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
First thing I want to start off with, is there a photo that folks out there might recognize your work from?
Yeah, so last year, Essence of Bellingham, it's an annual photo competition for amateurs, pros in Whatcom County to submit their best photos of Bellingham and Whatcom, and I was the best of show. The name of the photo is 48 degrees north, 122 degrees west, but that's Bellingham. It's the GPS coordinates of our city.
So AJ, what originally got you into the world of photography?
Well, I was probably about 8 or 9 when my dad, my folks would always take me out traveling, and my dad took me up to Hurricane Ridge for the first time. And as we were up there, you know, as a little kid, you're looking out across the mountains and stuff, and it was one of those mornings where the cloud cover just kind of came in, and it looked like, for me, like seeing our mountaintops reminded me of like a floating island. And I remember that was just so cool. And my dad at the time had a Fuji 110 film camera. It was this little skinny looking camera. And he goes, "Here, son, why don't you take your first photo?" And cool, I got Dad's camera. So I set myself up and I take this little thing and I go, "Cool, what do I do?" My dad's like, "Well, push the button." I'm like, "Cool, where's the button?" So I push the button and you know, I hear this click. And then my dad told me to rack the film, and I just thought it was just so cool. I'm like, "All right, where's my photo?" And my dad had explained to me, you know, we have to go take this, you know, to the panda hut and get it all developed. And, you know, I finally, you know, 2 weeks later, get my photograph. And I remember looking at it, I was like, "That's so cool. It doesn't look like I remember, but it looks so cool." I just was excited ever since then.
Awesome. So AJ, what's a unique phrase or a unique word that would describe your work?
Alchemy. So a lot of people, whenever you look at the definition of photography, it's defined as the study of writing with light, photography. I kind of don't see it that way. That's kind of the very clinical, scientific way of looking at it. For me, I see it more as, I'm more like a Time Lord. I'm actually taking time and light, and I have to put it together. And by definition, that's alchemy. You're taking and making something that is greater than its two parts. So you put time together and you put light together and you make a photograph, but time on its own, it's worth something. Light on its own, whatever. But when you put it together, that's a moment. And so that's why my slogan's "Every moment has a story," because I don't want to just take a photograph. I'm not taking something. I'm trying to capture. I'm trying to preserve. I'm trying to retell. And so when I look at that, I see myself as an alchemist. I'm trying to work with people, work with a place, and trying to figure out what the story is. And taking, again, those two parts, time and light, and putting it together and making something.
Okay, AJ, let's get into a little bit of your gear. So now, what's in your workflow? I see a lot of devices around here, but tell us about what your workflow consists of.
So about 2 years ago, I converted from DSLR, digital single lens reflex cameras, you know, those big body cameras, in favor of a newer technology called mirrorless. And they're a lot smaller, and at the time, a lot of people thought that they were less powerful, less pro. And that drove me nuts, because it's not about the gear. I mean, gear helps, but it's not what gear you have, it's who's behind the gear that makes the art. And so I dove into Sony Alpha series, which they have a wide range of cameras now. They didn't at the time. And what mirrorless allows me to do is take things from the past, going back to time, things from the past and kind of bring them back to the present. So I have in my hands here it's probably a 30-year-old lens. It's a Canon 51.8. It's one of my favorite primes. But what's great about it is, you know, the camera that this was attached to is long gone. But the lens is still good. And what mirrorless allows me to do is to put on an adapter like this. And what this does is it compensates for the space in a camera where there would be a mirror, because mirrorless there isn't one. Sony makes what's called an E mount. E stands for 18 millimeters, and that's the actual distance between the flange and the sensor. 18 millimeters is about yay deep or so. And because of that, you're able to put in passive adapters like this and old lenses like this. And you're able to kind of transform your new age camera using older technology. And these lenses also save you a lot of money, and they also get you a style that's kind of lost. And so I really like that kind of upcycling approach to photography. And so that's part of my main thing is whenever I use my camera gear, I can actually grab whatever lens I like. Because if I want Canon, I can use Canon. If I want Fujitsu, if I want whatever, I can use it because I can adapt it. So that's a big part of my workflow. Another big part of my workflow is baggage.
Baggage.
Oh, baggage.
Okay.
So, and I'm one of those people where I don't have one to rule them all. I don't have the Lord of the Rings bag or the unicorn bag as most camera aficionados call it. I'm always in search of the perfect camera bag, but until then I have several different bags that I use. I have a Peak Design Everyday Messenger 13 that I use for a lot of my professional work. It's kind of my mobile office. But the bag that I compare all bags to is actually this one. It's by a company called Tenba, and these guys just make a fantastic bag. This is their DNA 8, and as you can tell, it's very small,
Sure.
which kind of intimidates a lot of photographers because, oh, you got to have everything. No, you don't. That's a lot of my mantra is you don't have to have everything with you. You just have to have the right things with you. And if you can access it, again, you can work with that alchemy, because if you're struggling to find your gear and you have all this gear with you, you tend to not use it. And so this Tenba bag kind of led me down the path of, really figuring out my craft and really figuring out what I use and what I don't. And that's what I usually promote, especially with my Patreon patrons, is looking at photography from the lens of what do you need and what do you want to do with it, and leave the rest at home. So that's a big part of it. I use mobile, so I have an iPad mini Retina. That's pretty much my go-to when it comes to mobile. I still use a MacBook Pro, which I don't have today, but I have a MacBook Pro that I do all my post-processing with. And then I also have this guy.
Typewriter.
A typewriter.
Uh-huh.
This is my Smith Corona, made in America, 1970s. Blue typewriter. And I found this, I scavenged Craigslist and found this in Washington, found this in Spokane. And I went and picked it up, and I bought it for I think like $50. And you can tell it's almost like it's new. And what's great about this is it's all mechanical, no batteries, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. And I use this every month for my Patreon campaign. I have a level of patrons that support me at the highest level. And what I do is every month, instead of typing a blog post and putting it on a blog, I actually write it. I type it. And much like how I see photography as alchemy, I'm mixing, it's a one-of-a-kind thing. Photography's kind of gotten lost with this concept that you share everything and, anybody can take a photo, which is true. I think that's great. But we're getting away from that artisanship. And I wanted to bring it back. I wanted to bring writing back to artisanship. And with it, I also develop a print. This is an actual a digital photograph on instant film. And so I pair these two every month, and I write and I produce a one-of-a-kind letter, blog post, and print for each one of those Skookum patrons that I have. So this is part of my workflow. And then last but not least is my journal. I've been journaling since I was a kid. And the great thing about this is I use this for everything. I think about what I'm going to shoot, where I'm going, my bucket list. Again, no batteries needed. So a lot of my workflow, yes, I have digital technology. That's how I take my photographs. But I have roots in analog because, at the end of the day, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to write. I'm trying to type. I'm using film to preserve. Don't need ink. So that's my bulk of my workflow.
It's a great look at the intersection between analog and digital. Okay, AJ, how about software? Now we talked about some of the digital aspects of your workflow. Tell us about how does the software dovetail into your workflow?
So software is an interesting topic for me because I talk about this a lot on my Patreon. I've used Adobe products for probably 2 decades, and they're a fine product, but I also think they're bloated, they're slow, they're not innovating. And so a lot of my research, because I'm a technologist outside of being a photographer, I look at alternatives. I talk to a lot of people, and I work with a lot of users from various ranges of skill. And so I really wanted to take my Patreon campaign and focus on teaching, not just creating stuff, but actually teaching other people to use these tools. So I migrated towards a few different apps. Pixelmator, I'm primarily a Mac user, so most of my apps are in the Mac iOS-ville. But no, I use Pixelmator. Most of my Photoshopped photos that you see comes out of Pixelmator. Affinity, which is made by I think a UK-based company called Serif. They have a suite that they have what's called the Affinity Suite, which is Affinity Photo, which is straight up Photoshop. And then Affinity Designer, which is an Illustrator, because I do some vector-based stuff. And then beyond that, writing, I write using an app that I've had since my grad school days. It's done by 2 developers called OhmWriter. And it's very distraction-free writing.
Ohm like in?
Ohm.
Ohm. Oh,
yes.
Okay, all right.
So it's very reminiscent of this typewriter. You can change the clicks as you click on the keyboard, and you have ambient music. It forces you to remove yourself from this always connected social life that we have. And so that's really my bread and butter when it comes to my desktop software.
Sounds great. Okay, AJ, let's talk about your workspace.
Okay.
Now, I want you to describe for us your dream setup, your dream workspace, no budget, sky's the limit, go.
Earth. Okay.
Not expecting that one. Tell us more about Earth.
Okay, so that's the thing, is I like being out. I have a little bit of a background as a journalist and as an editor, and some of the best things that you can work with is out in the world, as things happen, being in the right place at the right time. And like some people climb mountains and they want to summit as many peaks as they can. For me, that's those shots where it's a once in a lifetime shot. Clouds sweeping in, just as like I was a kid, right? I was in the right place at the right time. There's no way I can recreate that photo. And that's the mountain that I climb. And I get a high off of it. So if I could find a place that would be perfect, it would be like a jet plane, like my personal jet plane with my personal pilot, and I just look at them and I go, today we're going to Kuala Lumpur. Like that is my perfect workspace. But otherwise, we're in a coffee house. This is the extension of my office. Anywhere that I can get Wi-Fi, that I can throw down my typewriter, and yes, I bring this out in Bellingham and type on it publicly, and I get some interesting looks and comments. But
I imagine so.
It's part of, I like being out and seeing life. That's what photography is about, is archiving the alchemy of the moment of Bellingham and the people and our culture. And yes, I put it online, but I also put it in print. I want to retell those stories. So that's if I could have anything, give me my unicorn bag that doesn't exist, and give me the perfect jet plane with, the perfect pilot and an unlimited budget so I can just go take photographs.
That's a great plan.
Right.
All right, AJ, so what is your biggest pet peeve about technology?
So both as a technologist and as a photographer, it is the same thing. Can I say fanboys?
I believe yes.
Or fangirls, fanboy.
Fan people.
Fan people.
That's permissible.
For fan people. So as a technologist, I run into this a lot where it's like, oh, I'm a Mac head, or oh, I can't touch Mac, I'm a PC. I don't care. And in photography, it's even worse, because you have people, oh, I only shoot on a Leica, or oh, I can't use Sony, I only know Canon. Really? There's different tools for different people. Like if you're a sports photographer and you have a specific lens you're using on a Nikon body, I have utmost respect for you, absolutely. But if you're not a sports photographer, you don't need to carry the big gun, right, to take a pretty photo of a bug. Mm-hmm. And so really, people that just get so caught up in, oh, I have to have this brand affinity, drives me nuts, because people get in arguments. If you go to a photography forum and you search for, if you're a Sony person, you go to a Fuji forum, man, that's fighting words. Can't we all just get along and take photos? That's what we're trying to do. Let's go out, and if we spent as much time at each other's throats on the internet as we did taking photos, we'd have a lot better photos and we'd have happier people.
That's a good point. All right, AJ, so what's the best advice you've ever received in your life?
So it's gonna sound like a cop-out, but it comes from my dad. My pops, he's a master builder, a master construction worker, and the man basically can build anything in my eyes. I mean, not as a kid I thought that, but even as an adult, I swear my dad could build anything. And as a kid, I would have something, or I would go to a store and I'd get something, and I'm like, hey Dad, can I get this? And he's like, you like that? Build it. Oh man. And so again, I'd get older and hey Dad, I really want to, get this thing. And he goes, oh, you like that? Build it. And I was like, man. And what he was teaching me this whole time wasn't the fact of like, oh, get a hammer, get nails, is if you like something, what goes into it? Don't just take it for granted. Don't just, buy something because, oh, I like it and, throw it away after you're done. Get something that lasts and put something, if you know what goes into it, you can appreciate it more. Mm-hmm. And so even at my earliest age that I can think of, my dad's always telling me that. And I take it with me. When I do a photograph, I have to think about what goes into a shot. I have to think about what gear. Everything that goes in, I only get one chance. And so it forces me to think and deconstruct things. I look at the greats. For me, Ansel Adams, or even more contemporary, Trey Radcliffe. I look at their shots and I go, how did they do it? And I'm not going to copy it, but I'm going to appreciate the style and the work that they did in that photograph. And what can I get out of that? As a technologist, I have to work with very frustrated people. Their technology's not working, but that's not what they're trying to get across. I have to get into their head and I have to think about the problem that they're facing and deconstruct it so that I can help them better, so I can teach them. And so if it wasn't for my dad teaching me, don't just take something, what goes into it? Deconstruct it so you can rebuild it.
Very good. So finally, as we wrap up, if there was a bit of advice you can give an amateur photographer or someone who wants to start in the world of photography, what would you tell them?
So I would just say, don't worry about the gear. If you're worried about the gear and you're spending all your time worrying about that, stop. If you don't have the best camera, you don't have a $6,000 camera or a $3,000 lens, that doesn't make you pro. That's crap. If you didn't spend your time worrying about gear and you just were taking that time and you're taking what camera you have and you're going out and making photographs, that's the best start you can do. It's not about having the most expensive gear. It's not about having a jet plane. You can find moments and you can capture them, and that's the joy of photography. Just being in the right spot at the right time.
And for those of you out there on the net that want to check out more of AJ's work, you can go to
ajbarse.com, or you can support me as a Patreon patron at Patreon, patreon.com/AJBarse.
That's great. Thanks very much for watching this look into AJ's workflow. And for more interviews like this, check out www.whatcomworkflow.com. Thanks for watching.